Welcome to the Re-Entry Archive, the Antithesis of Enlightenment, a Datura Experience Report, taken from erowid.org. The Datura Experience, as anyone who knows this drug, the realms this plant may show you, are difficult to put into words, as though describing another sense. It was a July evening. Calming nature surrounded me, and the glistening orange beam of sunlight fell onto the green canopy, emitting a spiritual aura that was to commence me on my journey. For the last few weeks leading up to this, I had wanted to get my curious hands on Jimson seeds. I had been doing a year abroad in Berkeley, so psychonauts were common. After reading about this mysterious plant, I was more than just intrigued. Having previously had a passion for salvia and other natural deliriants, Datura seemed to be the missing link. I've never fully broken through, but psychedelics had become an almost cult-like obsession of mine. You see, I wasn't interested in the highs, the buzzes, or the euphoria of most substances. What got me was what they don't speak about, the spiritual, groundbreaking realities some hidden plants can take you to. This made everything else irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. This Valhalla was one I could really see without having to imagine. So after reading about this substance, my intrigue was too powerful. I felt as though I was chosen, as though this was now my turn to peek behind the curtain. Eventually, and after countless dark web searches, my efforts came to no avail. In fact, this only made me more desperate to find it. Of all the psychonauts I knew, only one could help me in my search. This guy was called Jack. He was to become the one person I could take this with. After a few days of waiting, I was awoken from my sleep to see that he had managed to find some seeds. I froze. Reality hit me. This was real. My brain was anxious, but my desires prevailed. A mix of adrenaline and excitement led to a loss of sleep that night. After having prepared the day for the trip, we drove to the forest in silence. We took the seeds. I felt bellyache for the first 5 minutes. Now we wait, I thought. Jack stood watching his trip sitter, slowly roasting a joint as I prepared myself. All anxiety had gone. In fact, I felt completely sober, clear-headed but physically slow. Suddenly, after a while, I saw my friend Jess. She'd come to see how I was doing. She'd been there with me before on a mushroom trip, but I hadn't seen her in so long. Are you feeling it yet? No, not really. I just feel dehydrated. I think I might have underdosed. However, I felt this negative feeling in my gut when I looked at her. I remembered the fakeness, and I wondered why she was even here. She cheated on me. She's not my friend. Jack called out, "What are you doing? Come back." Why is he trying to stop me from seeing Jess? I thought. For a brief second, reality struck me. What am I doing? I looked up to see nothing but the cool air. Night was commencing. Shivers ran down my spine. My anxiety grew rapidly. I knew I was delirious. Then I was back to this strange realm. We decided we need to get back. Things were becoming more and more weird. We somehow made it back to my apartment. Jack insisted on staying to look after me. Whilst the PS4 was on, I thought I'd make a drink for my guest. I saw my dad there. His face seemed much younger, but angrier. "Don't invite people over without telling me. This isn't your place." I sulked off like a child back to my room. I opened the window, pulled out a Lucky Strike and puffed it. It was euphoric, but just as I was beginning to have my first few inhales, I heard Jack run into the room. "Close that window right now." "Why?" He slammed it back, and a look of terror was on his face. "You are not in a good way." "Shut up. I invited you into my dad's apartment for the night to chill. Don't be a pain." "You're messed up. This is not your dad's place. Your dad has passed away. We need to sober you up. I'm worried." "No, I'm fine." I didn't take any real notice of what he was saying. In fact, I barely even recognized him. Why was he in my house? I knew I was supposed to be doing something today. I'd forgotten. I'd taken Datura. I'd forgotten who Jack was. I'd forgotten who I was. I was terrified. I was met with paradox after paradox. I felt I was going insane. I carried on smoking. My memory is still fuzzy at this part of the experience, but according to Jack's recollection, I was angrily speaking gibberish. Not just a mix of words, but complete fluent gibberish, as if I was speaking another language. However, things got even more intense, and this is where my memory is really hazy. Jack told me that I was puffing away on an imaginary cigarette, talking to myself for an hour. Once he came into the room, however, he saw that I was seriously delirious. My arms were bleeding. I felt as though pain would take me away from this hellish reality. Pain would make me feel normal. Pain would zap me back to a microsecond of reality, to have a glimpse back at normality. Just to be clear, I've never been into self-harming before this, and I've been free from any mental illness. This was the only antidote for me to escape this hell. There were only a few minor cuts on my arm, and a small puddle of blood on the floor. But this was not the enlightening experience I thought it might be. After Jack moved me to bed, he said I told him lucidly I was sobering up and was fine. This couldn't have been further from the truth, but this truth was found only too late. The whispers pounding my mind were unbearable. I had lost my mind. After I crashed, I found myself on Jack's sofa. Apparently he had found me laying unconscious on the floor of my kitchen, with butter spread all over the floor and cat food on top of the fridge. Eventually, after a few days, I was back to normal reality, yet the effects have never completely subdued. The existential dread of the trip was so real and so horrifying. I've been diagnosed with manic depression and generalized anxiety. Jack never really spoke to me in the same way, and I feel completely alone, knowing that just behind this very thin fabric of normality is hell. Datura is the antithesis of enlightenment. It is the destroyer of hope. I should preface this integration discussion by saying I don't consider Datura a psychedelic, and I would advise that all travellers steer clear of this particular plant. Datura doesn't induce psychedelia in the classic sense, rather it thrusts the user into a prolonged state of delirium-induced psychosis. The tropane alkaloids found within Datura are also highly toxic. The anticholinergic effects of these alkaloids can lead to symptoms of hypothermia, tachycardia, and even death. However, it is the psychological effects which are most concerning. At high doses, Datura creates a psychotic state in which the traveller cannot distinguish between hallucination and reality. It is for this reason I believe that this plant can never be truly used safely. True pharmacological responsibility would be choosing to avoid this plant. I think the most useful lesson to take from this experience is the recognition that psychoactive substances do not guarantee enlightenment or healing. And in fact, if used irresponsibly, these substances can re-traumatize travellers or even create new trauma of their own. This goes double for Datura, which has a way of consistently putting travellers and their trip sitters into difficult and often dangerous situations. Heed my advice. Avoid this plant at all costs.